Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of Corrections and Correctional Practices. I want to start again by giving you all a thumbs up for the work that you have completed, particularly on your discussion boards and discussion board responses. I think that everyone is doing a really good job of actually analyzing the information rather than just collecting the information from the readings and passively sharing it. So keep up the good work. Otherwise, I do want to remind you all that your position paper topics are due a week from today, next Sunday, the 11th. The position paper is the major assignment for this course, and your topic should reflect something related to corrections. You can really go a lot of different routes with this. You could do something on parole or mandatory minimum sentencing, capital punishment, living in prisons, working in prisons, whatever really suits you and that you feel that you could write about and take a stance for. That is the point of the position paper topic, is to develop support for a particular issue. As far as actually submitting it, you can email it directly to me, or if you feel so inclined, you can create a post within the student lounge to get some feedback from your peers. Either way works. Whatever suits you best is fine for me. If you do decide to change your topic at any point once you start writing, that's completely fine with me as well. You could, just because if you wanted to refine it, or if you decided that you wanted to go a different route, again, completely fine. Just let me know so I can continue to give you some feedback on the paper. So moving on to this week's readings, Module 3, this section covers working in prison. When considering this subject, we must remember that prisons are bureaucracies. Accordingly, 3 organizational principles help explain how prisons function when you work within a prison. The supervision of subordinates follows the principle of unity of command. This is the idea that employees report to only one superior. Orders and directives are issued from administrative staff and are passed down to lower ranking staff. This process also reflects the different positions of authority among the prison staff, which reflects the next principle, the chain of command. Finally, the span of control principle refers to staff members' ability to supervise only a limited number of subordinates. It keeps the chain of command actually flowing. The institutional managers within a prison consist of the warden and their deputy wardens, who are responsible for managing the prison. The warden maintains contact with the world beyond the prison walls, such as the central office, parole board, or legislature. And the deputy wardens oversee a variety of bureaucratic functions, such as buying supplies, keeping the buildings and the grounds, and providing food, maintaining records, all of that stuff. Officers who make up the custodial force have different ranks, such as captain, lieutenant, officer, and their performance on the job is judged by how well they manage inmates. Program personnel are responsible for running the educational, vocational, and treatment programs within the prison, and industrial and agricultural activities at the prison are overseen by supervisors. These individuals work outside of the custodial hierarchy. Prison governance refers to the sound and firm management of inmates and staff. Effective governance is challenging for correctional administrators because the power that officers possess to control inmates is limited. Officers have few legitimate rewards to provide inmates for good behavior, and available punishments do not represent much of a departure from inmates' daily routines. Correctional administrators who successfully govern their institutions do not rely on inmate leadership to control the population, but rather apply sound management principle to prison operations. When discussing working in prisons, we should touch on violence in prison. The most common type of prison violence involves one inmate attacking another, or prisoner-on-prisoner violence. The true extent of this type of violence is unknown because many incidents do not come to the attention of prison officials. In comparison, prisoner-on-officer violence is less common. Examples of this type of violence include physical assaults, thrown objects, and verbal threats. Lastly, officer on prisoner violence is tightly regulated. While officers are allowed to use necessary levels of physical force in certain situations, such as when attempting to break up a fight between prisoners, um, instances of inmate abuse by officers rarely comes to the attention of the general public. Such occurrences, however, are likely lower today than they were in years past due to lawsuits and greater regulations. Linking working in prison to last week's readings are elderly offenders. Inmates over 50 years of age pose a particular challenge for corrections because they have special needs. For example, elderly inmates can require special housing, and accommodations include assigning older inmates to a bottom bunk or to special cells that have grab bars to actually assist in getting up. Some states have specialized facilities for frail or elderly inmates, but elderly inmates also likely require more care, more medical care. The cost of caring for an elderly inmate is much higher than for younger prisoners. Some states are actually moving to expedite the release of elderly inmates in order to help cut costs. Also to be considered is the issue within the issue of healthcare is that the rate of confirmed AIDS cases in state and federal prisons is more than 2 times higher than the rate in the total U.S. population. To deal with HIV and AIDS, prison officials have developed a variety of policies. However, their doing so is complicated by a host of legal, political, medical, budgetary, and attitudinal factors as they decide what actions their institutions should take. Policies concerning separate housing for HIV infected inmates can be and are extremely controversial. Since the deinstitutionalization movement of the 1960s, which emphasized the depopulation of large-scale mental health hospitals, jails and prisons, began to see increasing numbers of mentally ill within their confines. Despite the increasing presence of this offender group, the availability and type of mental health treatment programs have differed in sufficiency from one prison to the next. There's no set standard of what type of mental health is actually available to prisons, even though there are standards for what should be available. Some state officials have moved toward developing separate secure facilities to provide psychiatric treatment for those who are mentally ill or potentially violent and would pose a risk to other inmates or prisoners. In addition, the special needs of long-term incarcerated and sexual minority populations have created additional stress for correctional planners. As prison lengths get longer and inmates age, releasing inmates back into society becomes a challenge for those who may fear life without the restrictions of prison. Furthermore, the challenge of housing special needs prisoners, such as transgendered inmates, has added additional work for correctional staff at reducing and or attempting to eliminate inmate aggression and violence, especially inmate rape. New laws have been developed to protect and support the rights of these inmates labeled as sexual minorities. The numbers of inmates in federal and state prisons who have also served in the armed services has steadily decreased over the last 30 years. However, many of these individuals struggle with multiple problems, including physical injuries, PTSD, depression, and substance abuse. Some of these problems may lead to serious antisocial behaviors, including committing crimes against others, which is why they may be incarcerated in the first place. Recent estimates state that approximately 9.4% of all prisoners in jails and prisons are veterans. Vietnam veterans are the largest group among incarcerated veterans. So that also leads to the crossover effect of elderly inmates and veteran inmates. Local program initiatives, commonly referred to veteran assistance programs, have developed primarily in response to the growing unmet needs of returning veterans. Among the services that these projects provide is to help find available counseling and other benefits for eligible vets. The goal of veteran courts is to focus attention on the unique problems of veterans involved in the criminal justice system and to provide alternative community-based correctional programs when appropriate. Some state correction systems administer policies that include segregated housing and treatment programs with the aim of achieving a successful transition for the veteran back into civilian life. What all of this boils down to is that working in prison is an extremely difficult job, no matter the position. Any one prison is an institution that runs within layers of other larger institutions. And with it being the end of the road of the criminal justice system, it means that any changes made in the other two parts, law enforcement or the courts, affects the prison in some way, be it through the officers, other staff, inmates, or direct changes that have to be made within the institution. Working as a correctional officer means that one must not only enforce the rules of the institution, but also act as a line of defense between inmates and society and as a link between free society and incarcerated society. The toll that working as a correctional officer has can be seen through a variety of statistics, including the rate of PTSD, which in officers is roughly 30%, a 40% higher risk of suicide than in other professions, a higher rate of encountered violence, which is only second to police work, and higher rates of divorce and substance use than in other professions. So this week's readings are really going to cover all of the things, or at least part of the things, that correctional officers in particular are faced with when they go into work every single day. And I hope that you'll be able to start to bring some of those links between what it's like living in prison and what it's like working in prison, or basically living within a prison for 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. Um, Again, if you guys have any questions or concerns for me, please let me know. You can email me or text me. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Don't forget your current event posts, and we'll speak soon. Thanks so much.